Let's welcome our next guest. All right, so Csaba Lucas is a business advisor and entrepreneur, celebrated for his expertise in regenerative technologies and transformative processes. With over 30 years of experience, Csaba has guided Wall Street executives, Fortune 100 leaders, professional athletes, and celebrities, as well as individuals navigating significant challenges. Csaba's unique experiences include living with tribes in sub-Saharan Africa, which I gotta ask you about that, and the Amazon, and engaging with wisdom keepers from Siberia to Australia, driven by a passion for leading transformative change. Let's give it up again for Csaba.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys. Thank you for staying here. I know this is the end of the day, so let's try to make it, count.
All right, so first thing first, when I read your bio, when I was looking at some of your history, and I think about some of your experiences, so sub-Saharan Africa, Amazon, I don't even know what wisdom keepers from Siberia means. Like, what causes you to go out there and search for these other experiences?
It's a good question, thank you. I grew up before the regime change in Eastern Europe. So I'm from Hungary originally. And once I had the good fortune to move over to North America, I realized in one moment what a different experience I had in a socialist country versus a capitalist country. An interesting story that there's a gentleman who's a Nobel Prize winning scientist who once he won a Nobel Prize, he wanted to figure out what is happiness all about. So he went to Eastern Europe before the regime change, and he asked Eastern European housewives how happy they were. And 100% of them gave the same answer, which is, I never thought about it before.
Wow.
Which, as a capitalistic country, and America, even in our constitution, it's in there, the right to happiness and all that jazz. I was like, that's interesting, right? Maybe happiness is not that important for human beings. And I started to wrap my mind around, well, the people who are happy, they actually don't try to be happy. They lead their lives in a particular way, and if you ask them, are you happy? They're like, yeah, I am happy. All the people who focus on happiness, they're usually not very happy. So I was like, how would that be to look at drastically different cultures? Because let's say socialism in Hungary, still white people's jazz. America, it's very much the background is still a European white sort of angle still. It doesn't matter how much we dislike it, that it's not more integrated. Still, there's that Europeanness somehow. So I was like, what would that be to look at a complete different way of looking at how to be a human being? So I knew that the Zuwasi had the most ancient DNA from all human beings who exist today. So they are literally the direct descendants of the first Homo sapiens, whoever left of it. And so I was like, it'd be interesting to see if I could spend some time with them. It took us about 3 months to find a tribe that truly lived like a hunter-gatherer group. And I had the good fortune first spending a month with them, and I've been going back and forth for several decades, spending a lot of time. And they were kind enough to share their wisdom with me in sometimes awkward ways. What is that they believe matters, how to be human? And it's drastically different than what we know here. So I had the good fortune to do this in the middle of the Amazon. And up in Siberia, it's very simple. Most people, let's say, who drinks ayahuasca here in Los Angeles, right? They say, oh, a shaman gave me the ayahuasca. My answer to that, anyone who calls themselves a shaman from the Amazon, they don't know what they're talking about because shamans only exist in Siberia. And this is what our world became. We are this over-consumerized world, where everything is a product. Everything is to sell, And it's very difficult to be human these days. There's a cultural aspect of how to be a human and a human side, and that's really what I learned from being exposed to such a drastically different cultures. If you live in one culture, you can't tell them apart. Culture creates problems and challenges, and that's not a bad thing, but it does create confusion, and the humanity holds the answers to what really matters in life. So, yeah, that's a long ass answer.
No. Anything surprise you on these travels? I need some stories, man. You're not getting off that easy. What surprised you about this?
Okay, so I have a billion different surprises.
Give me one.
I'll give you, let's see. Okay, so currently we live in a very interesting political world, right? Where we have some leaders who, whatever they say, you not necessarily believe 100% that is true. And people get pissed off about it. The first time I spent with the Zuwasi some significant amount of time, I remember that hunters came back and after a hunt, and everyone wanted to hear about the story. How was this hunting? And they're like, oh my gosh. I had a translator at the beginning. I thought translators matter, so there was a translator. So the translator said, yeah, they're saying that it was so difficult. They took forever to hunt down this kudu and so on and so forth. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Now there was so much meat that the next day there was no hunting. Next evening, everyone wanted to hear about the story again. So they're like, oh, well, the animal had a broken leg. So it was one of the easiest hunt ever. I was like, did I misunderstand here something? Is there missing something? I was like, okay, probably the translator, whatever. Third day, again, everyone wanted to hear about the story. And they said a completely different story again. And it took me a long time to figure out, Adam, what the heck was going on here. Eventually, I kind of did. Now, storytelling is a very interesting notion. If I tell you a story about taking a shower, and I tell you how the shower system works and what is water and all that jazz, you will never get clean from it. Talking about something and experiencing something is two drastically different things. And our world don't understand this. We think too much about our chats and our talking, and we're taking ourselves too seriously. And we believe that has something to do with experience. Now, the Zuwasi has a culture that goes back 200,000 years. You understand that our current culture in our Western world is about 300 years old when it comes to this scientific, materialistic world and worldview. It's a very, very juvenile culture. Not bad, it's amazing. I love America and the Western world, but it's a very juvenile culture. They have a culture that goes back 200,000 years. There are cave drawings that is 70,000 years old, and they represent the words and the conversations that still today they have around the campfire. So a culture like this holds some really interesting wisdoms. So I was like, okay, so where is this coming from? Telling a story over and over totally differently. And a culture like that, where they understand that what happens if you try to describe the story, it makes you more than others. It's maybe good for you, but it's not really good for other people. Everyone is going to start to feel weird about it. So they believe that, well, you were not at the hunt, so who cares about trying to explain it the way it happened? You won't understand it. Experiencing it is totally different. What matters, what is good for the tribe, what is good for all of us. I want to inspire you to join me next time in the hunt. If I keep repeating the same story, all of them, they will be pissed off at you that it's boring. You already said this yesterday. It doesn't inspire me to want to go hunt. So that culture understands storytelling is about incentivizing an action that's going to be good for all of us. Some of our leaders today accidentally discover this. And we connect to that because fictional stories are all about just one thing. Get masses of people behind an idea. It's nothing to do with truth or reality. No, none of that. It's about getting people behind a story. Accidentally, some people uncover this and they don't necessarily use it for something that's collectively maybe good for everyone, but they understood this. And that's not a bad thing. We need to examine that as a society. What a tight ass we are about lying. Maybe there's something more to it, that's more human.
These experiences that you've had, how does that fuel some of the work that you're doing today, whether it's Wall Street executives, Fortune 100 leaders, how does all this connect?
We are all human. And if we don't understand our humanity, we don't understand what the heck we are doing. The problem is today is the most important thing for people to understand who they are and what makes them, what blows their hair back. Most people don't pay attention. People, let's say historically, if someone back in the 1500s, they didn't spend time because they were busy going to the farming and all that, they didn't have time to figure out who they were. But that's okay because no one really knew you better, no one knew your thoughts, your patterns better than you did. Today it's different. There are companies who are really invested into figuring you out. And if you don't pay attention, and they just learn a little bit more about you than you know about yourself, you become a slave. Indeed, most of our world, the whole consumer world is all about slavery. And people don't realize it. Everyone is slave. They're thinking about, okay, it's so important for me to have this shoe, that car. I gotta work hard and all that. Well, if you look at humanity, historically, this is complete bull. Most people, the 117 billion who ever existed, we had an overwhelming sense of what's human, what creates quality. Most of us don't practice this, mostly because we're enslaved and we don't even realize it. So that's why I'm like, thank you. That's why I'm trying to focus on, thank you, Liz. I'm trying to focus on the human aspect of everything. You know, I'm involved in tech. I'm involved in more than 30 different ventures very heavily, but I always focus on the human aspect of it all. Without that, we miss completely the boat, and we start to develop ventures that create unintended consequences. I don't believe humans ever got out there, I'm gonna screw this thing up, I'm gonna destroy the planet, I'm gonna overuse this resource. I don't think that happened. Usually unintended consequences created the problem on planet Earth. And I was starting to riff about this, okay, where do unintended consequences come from? And they're coming from one simple source. It's people who don't know what the heck they're doing. So I'll give you a great example that most of you guys first gonna roll your eyes thinking that, are you just gonna criticize Steve Jobs? And I'm like, I am going to. Our world cannot afford more Steve Jobs or Zuckerbergs and people who accidentally succeeded too early in life. They accidentally succeeded so early that they were not wise yet, and they have too much power. And just think about Steve Jobs. The guy created some amazing stuff, iPhones, blah, 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 right? It's amazing. But how many things are we trying to mitigate as a society right now as an outcome of his inventions? He obviously was not a very nice partner, not a very nice boss, not a very good parent, not a very healthy individual. He was great at creating some creative shit. And all that stuff, all of his imbalances rippled into the stuff he created, which all of us right now is dealing with as a society. We cannot afford any more out of balance leaders creating systems that reaches the masses. So everything about business must be about humans. We need to make sure that people are hiring differently than before. Just because you have a subject matter expertise and you're a great CFO, that doesn't mean you should work with a project that reaches the masses. Because your imbalance is potentially going to ripple into everything you do, the service, the products, and all so on. So if you don't understand what really is human, how to recognize when someone is a balanced human being or someone who's aching and aiming for balance in their lives, without that, it's impossible to create ventures that are not going to have unintended consequences in the world.
Let's go deeper in that concept. So for those that are out there that do have that bent or do want to make a big difference in the world, like what are some things that they should be thinking about?
I think maybe one of the easiest and most complicated thing at the same time to figure out what is real and what is fiction. Most people don't really think about what is real. Real is whatever is going on right now and your five-sensory mechanism can connect to it. Everything else is just a story. I have 5 kids, and I have an amazing wife, but at this given moment, I cannot connect with them. So therefore, it's a story. Anything that happened in the past, you don't remember it the way it happened. You remember it the way how the story you told yourself while it was happening, and now you remember the story. And every time when we think about the past, or every time we think about the future, it's just a story, it's nothing else. Things can happen, and there are some probable outcomes of the future, and less probable. But I bet you anything, I mean, we live here in LA, and I have many friends who live in the Palisades, and I had conversations with them in December, and they share their heartaches, their problems, the challenges they had. None of them had the speculation that, well, maybe everything is gonna burn down around me.
Yeah.
You know, we Westerners are so arrogant believing that we got this under control. We have it all figured out. We are not, we don't. If you don't realize what is real and what is just a fiction, you oftentimes make decisions based on fiction versus reality. We suck at it so bad as Westerners. I don't know how many of you meditated before, but when people, first time they try to meditate, oftentimes they say, oh, Csaba, this is not for me, I have too many things on my mind, right? Well, it's just basically we are so incentivized to live in fiction as a consumer world that you're sucked into the future and into stories that you should have this, so you become like that, and so on and so forth, that we don't even realize that we cannot even be in reality, understand what reality is. We live in a constant state of fiction. And then we believe that the past happened. This creates relationship problems as opposed to understanding that stuff happened, but you don't know who was behind you when making faces while someone was laughing in front of you and you thought that, they disliked you. You have no idea what really happened. And if a story does not charge you up, allow you to show up the best way right now, you gotta find a way to change the story so you can be present right now, right here. Otherwise the fiction creates the stress response in your system, which narrows your vision in the now, and you're not gonna be able to see all the opportunities and everything that surrounds you. Anyhow, I could talk about this forever. I'm gonna try to shut up.
So for you professionally, what are some, on this journey, what are some of the things that have changed, for yourself, let's say now versus maybe 20 years ago?
That's a fantastic question. It really is, 20 years ago, I was considered very successful when it comes to working athletes. I worked with the Lakers, I worked with Borussia Dortmund players, with all kinds of world champion athletes in figure skating, bodybuilding, weightlifting, all kind of jazz. But I kind of took whatever project made sense to me that brought in money, right? As now I am on the other side of 50, I'm working on the second 50, I look at things differently. I have 3 very important points that every project I'm involved with has to ace. Number 1, the venture upon success has got to create big enough ripple that it changes humanity for the better. Number 1. Number 2, it needs to be with people who, if I would have to spend dinner every single night for the remaining of my life, I should be fine with that. Number 3, upon success, the venture needs to create big enough financial upside so I can partake in redistributing wealth around the world in a way that is better for everyone. So these 3 points are very important to me, And sometimes one of them is really hard and 2 are easy. And then I have to be diligent not to get behind that. Because you have after 30 plus years of working on 6 continents constantly, I have a big network. And there's a lot of opportunities, and it's really hard to decide what type of footprint you want to leave and how you want to show up. So I'm trying to be very diligent about that. Now, which 20 years ago, I kind of did whatever was able to create success or money and stuff like that.
Yeah. All right, here's my warning for my last question, and then we'll open it up to take a couple of questions from the audience. What kind of trends are you following right now? With your experience, all the different, countries you've been to, like what trends in business are exciting and or interesting to you right now?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, AI, hands down. Most exciting thing and the most dangerous thing. The problem is AI currently is operating like, when you learn to drive a car, what do they say? They say, here is the brake, you know how it works? And yes, okay, this is the gas, careful with that, right? AI is not working like that. AI is like, everyone's racing, let's fucking go, and let's see what's gonna happen. And then the brake is, we haven't figured it out yet. So as a society, we need to figure out what is the brake? What are the parameters that AI should be working through? If we don't pay attention, this powerful intelligence, which is the first intelligence that's not organic in our existence as the universe, as far as we understand it, every life form is organic. AI is an intelligence that is not organic, operates differently. We gotta be so careful because it's so fast. Even the most basic AIs, like algorithms, right? They're a very basic form of AI. They created already so much problems, right? So we have to be careful with it, but it can also create the most amazing things that humanity hasn't seen since we left the hunter-gatherer life. And I know that this is controversial. Most people would think that hunter-gatherer life, that's not that good. It's actually really, really good. Interestingly enough, most people think it's a really hard work. It's really not. We are unbelievable hunter-gatherers as a species, like superb. It's very hard to comprehend how amazing we are. And hunter-gatherer tribes, they spend approximately 30 hours a week, including hunting and gathering and taking care of the camp. The rest is spending time with the loved ones and keeping a more balanced world, We haven't had that since we started to farm and all that jazz. We became this slave first to farming and then the industrial world and now to other things. AI can potentially free us up if we do a good job. So I am super excited about AI.
All right, let's get some questions in.
I love everything that you're saying. Thank you so much. Randy Vale, transformational educator, intuitive counsel to diplomats around the world, turned technologist. After car accident, brain injury, I learned a lot. Kind of like your transformational endeavors. I have this theory that through abundance and wealth, my podcast is called Yes, Rio, Abundance and Wealth with Randy Vale. Through everything I learned, I imagine manifestation to you is different than manifestation to me because of your comments about story. Everything that is the past or even in the future is story. So what's real is the current reality. So my question to you is, what do you think about the abundance theory on manifestation, and is it to see it in your mind's eye and then activate it through your intentions, or is it completely different?
Great question, thank you so much. I would actually incentivize you to try to examine why are you asking this question first, before thinking about manifestation. What you want to manifest, maybe it doesn't matter that much. The question is, why the heck do you want to manifest, period? You know, why does that matter? And usually when you ask this question, and not you individually, but when people ask this question, they usually want to have more stuff, okay? So suddenly, if you start to examine, why do I want to have more stuff? Why is that most cultures are out there, believe, including Native Americans that is native to this land, right? They believe that if you have more than what you need, then you're a dangerous individual for yourself and for everyone in the tribe. So if your goal of trying to manifest because you want to have more abundance and more stuff around you, the question is more like, why do I want to have that when most humans through history believe that's a wrong thing to have? And that's when you can catch yourself that, oh my gosh, I was enslaved by this consumer idea. Now, I have this thesis that is not really proven. It's my idea. It might be completely off, but I want to share it with you guys if you don't mind. Which is the MO of a juvenile culture is that what's good for the individual who lives in that culture is not necessarily good for the society. And whatever is good for society, the consumer society, is not necessarily good for the individual. If there's an ancient culture that had the time to develop rituals and traditions, they developed a system where whatever is good for the individual is good for the society and vice versa. So we are in this very special moment in our society, this scientific consumer world, a materialistic world, that there hasn't been enough time yet to develop those rituals and traditions. So it's upon every single one of us to dig into our individual lives, ask these questions, so 100 years from now, 200 years from now, there will be a more robust culture where the rituals and tradition will teach us what is the human manual, which right now no one is teaching us. In our schools, I have 5 kids, I'm heavily involved in education for a very long time from multiple different angles. I tell you, those poor kids have no shot of learning anything at all. Not about physicality, not about psychology, nothing, you know? So we have to learn who we are. Pay attention to that, ask the questions. When automatically a thought comes up, just ask that question, is that my thought? Or is that I was indoctrinated with a certain idea in a way that I'm just acting out a program? Who's that gonna help, you know? So I would start to riff on this and look at things as rabbit holes, and put your phones down, disconnect time to time and ponder and have deep conversations with people so you can go deep down on those rabbit holes. And through those deep searches, you uncover the etiology of this question. And maybe that matters much more than manifestation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How you doing? I'm a former professional basketball player, and I mentor kids, and I'm scaling stuff as well as a business person. And I tell my young people all the time, you have to have a morning and night routine. Something that starts you off, to get you going, something to get you impressed. What is your morning routine or night routine, if you mind sharing? And did it change recently? Was it connected to different moments in your life? How do you balance that?
Oh, this is an awesome question. You know, the commonality between different cultures is that people who live close to nature, they have predictable sections and phases of their day. I identified, not alone, but with the help of many different cultures, 8 different stages of every cycle that exists. These 8 stages, very easy to connect to as a human being. We're wired for it if you live close to nature. First thing in the morning you wake up, and probably most of you guys had a chance to observe the sunrise. You have that sense of, this is nice. This is something that's so deeply engraved in us. A long time ago when we lived still in nature, all of us, and the darkness always represented the danger. And once the light came up, for us, kind of creatures that we are, it was always like, wonderful. Now the same thing you can explore when you have a child that is born into your life. I remember when I looked at every single one of my kids, at the beginning I'm like, oh my God, what an amazing thing. I call this the East energy. Every single thing, I believe that it starts with a level of inspiration, excitement. And that's actually how every culture around the planet, when they wake up first thing in the morning, it starts with that. So I try to mimic that system. I don't want to pick up my phone first thing in the morning, because you give away your chance of chemically setting yourself up as a human being, but more like, okay, what inspires me, what excites me? And honor that concept, honor that natural cycle, and then trying to honor throughout my entire day this system that is ever-changing. You're African American, I'm white. I am evolved to live in 4 seasons. So my changes throughout the year drastically change. It's supposed to. If you're born as an African American, your DNA is more for a similar type of existence, more than a European. That, my winter was very different than my summer. Your winter and summer, genetically, if you go back 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 generations, was pretty much the same. So we have to handle ourselves differently. Asking the questions, who am I, without being politically correct, but truly engaged to that matters. And these cycles and everything kind of colored by that. So I know it's not a straightforward answer, but I think it might allow you to think about a system that might be very exciting.
All right, last question, and then we're all gonna stick around too and have some fun. Tin, go for it.
All of us here are mission-driven entrepreneurs, and we tend to be very idealistic about what we want to achieve in the world, make a difference, various levels. And for the ones that just got started are subjected to having to earn money to sustain all of what we want to do with the resource, right? So can you recount a story of, maybe early on in your career or your journey where, you had to kind of power through these segments of not enough resources like money?
Yeah, this is a good question. So I have a quite multifaceted background when it comes to education. I have a business degree, I have a kinesiology degree, and I have a performance art degree. So the reason I'm bringing this up because I had the good fortune to delve into performance art a fair bit. And I remember working on really big films and tiny films where there was no budget. And it was amazing for me to experience that with tiny projects, the creativity always soars, and a big project, you sort of like doing what needs to be done. So just because you have little amount, if your mission is clear, you can find a way. I believe there's always a way. I've seen so much throughout my life, entrepreneurs and people are forgetting that we are up on Mars, that we went to the moon, right? That means even these absolutely insane things can happen. Therefore, if you want to create a product that you believe in, it is possible to do. You just need to buckle down and pay attention, and you will find your way. Just don't stop. Someone earlier mentioned that, the difference between succeeding versus not. The people who don't succeed, they stop before they succeeded. Simple as that. So I think there's always a way, always a way. Just don't stop and keep being creative. And sometimes the biggest gift when you don't have enough funds. If you have too much funds, sometimes everything gets flat. And that's one important thing. I know we gotta go, but when it comes to AI, another interesting thing about this, it might just be one of the first ventures where Google, let's say, with all the money, it might be a disadvantage comparison to a small team with limited amount of sources but major clarity. They might be able to create more worthwhile product than a giant organization with a bunch of people working behind it. So don't look at it as a negative or a limitation, but more like a potential to turn your creativity on and see things that no one ever seen before.
All right, let's give it up.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much.